Welcome back, everyone, to International Podcast Day 2020. We are continuing to go around the globe and talk to various podcasters and what's important to them, what's involved with podcasting within their specific regions. Today, we have a really interesting one from Zambia, and I'm really looking forward to the interaction about what's going on in that part of the world. But first, before we begin, I want you to make sure that you look down below at the stream here at our sponsors. Go over and pay them a visit. They've really provided a lot of important resources for us to continue to produce International Podcast Day. There's some great services that I appreciate that you check out. So, with further ado, I want to welcome the country of Zambia to International Podcast Day.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys having us.
No problem at all. So, with further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I understand we're having some bandwidth issues, so their videos may go out, but you're still going to hear the excellent content from them.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Hi, Cynthia. How are you doing?
Hey, Mukuma. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you want to start by introducing yourself first?
Oh, are we doing the ladies first?
I guess we are.
Okay, so my name's Cynthia Mulenga. I have two Mulengas, so you don't have to worry about which one is my surname or middle name. I also go by the name of Python Kalisi, that is on my social media. I have a background in software development, specifically the back end. I like using Python. I also do a bit of Java as well. I'm an advocate for women in tech, trying to help bridge the gap between the male and female participation in tech. I also do a lot of volunteer work. I help lead the Facebook developer circles here in Osaka, a community for developers. The list can go on, but I'm also a co-host for the podcast called CodeCast. Mukuma, your turn.
That was a lot, and I don't know how I'm going to top that. So first of all, people have a hard time pronouncing my name. So my name is Mukuma Musenge. Other people just call me Kuma for short, so it's easier to remember. Like Cynthia, I'm also a software engineer. I'm passionate about technology. I help build communities focused around technology within Zambia, specifically Lusaka right now. And I'm very interested in documenting this growth that we're currently going through as a country and penetrating the rest of Africa as well. So I'm also one of the co-hosts of the podcast CodeCast, CodeCast Zambia. So we focus on mostly technology. It goes without saying, and we do a lot of highlights on innovations in technology within Zambia, Africa, and the globe, and how it affects us as a community from a consumer perspective, as well as the role that developers play in accessing this new technology as well. We like to tell this story from our perspective and the challenges that we have, and yeah, that's pretty much what CodeCast is. So in terms of what our core facets are, we focused on developer evangelism, educating our African developer community. One of our goals is to directly influence the growth of this developer ecosystem, so we can connect developers and enthusiasts to authentic startup stories and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much what CodeCast is. Cynthia, what's it been like podcasting in Zambia so far? We're pretty young. We've only been doing this for like 3 years. There's been a lot to learn. What's been the experience like for you?
It has been an exciting journey. I remember when I was approached. Oh no, actually, I approached you guys because you did a call for a female co-host, and I remember reaching out to say, "Hey, have you found someone, or can I jump on board?" And you said I can jump on board, and I joined in. Honestly, I did not know what to expect. I remember after the first episode, I was a bit Nervous even after the recording. I was still nervous because I didn't know what really to expect, or the people like the content, or especially on my end, the input I put in.
Yeah.
But I have grown over the time. I'm less nervous now when it comes to recording or having to speak to people. So that
I'm
grossness.
always nervous. I'm nervous now.
Well, it has. I didn't say it has stopped. I said it has reduced. Yeah, so that's for sure. I've connected with lots of people who've listened to our podcast, either locally in Zambia. I remember meeting one of our listeners in Nigeria. I didn't even know that he was at a conference that I was attending, and he recognized me and he called me not by Cynthia. He actually called me by Python Kalisi, and I was like, oh, who's this one who knows me? It should be from Twitter. And yeah, they explained that they've listened to CodeCast Zambia and they liked the content. So it has really been exciting. There have been lessons learned, and also networks have grown. Yeah, I don't know about you, Mukuma.
Yeah, and I was just about to give a comment on that. Before we get into like the talk and stuff like that, I just wanted to highlight how, like, in the last 3 years, right, we've seen how largely unaffordable it is for a lot of people to get into podcasting locally. I mean, it's easy to get equipment, but then getting good quality equipment so you can raise the quality of the podcast is something that's still a challenge in terms of the cost, and also especially now during COVID, getting this equipment to come in from the US or from Europe or whatever, it's still a tall order for a lot of people. And what I like the most about our growth as a podcast is how we've been able to distribute so easily. I know that we've been really trying to make sure that we spend as little as possible, but still maintaining like a good quality podcast. And Anchor has been a really dope platform that we've used to distribute to different to all the different streaming platforms as well. So, like, the most interesting thing about podcasting in Zambia is how niche the market has been. Especially when we look at even people that are interested in technology, it's still a very small subset of the country itself, and we aren't a lot of people anyway. We're like 17 million. For context, Zambia is in Southern Africa, close to South Africa. I know most people know where South Africa is, so we're somewhere right above South Africa. We have like 17 million people. So what I've noticed over the last 3 years is the market is growing, and that's really helping. We are seeing a new uptake of listeners, and people are staying and listening to some of our really long episodes, which can go over an hour sometimes. And this is something that's been really encouraging, and I hope that over the next year or two we'll see this continue growing. And I'm happy that there's lots more people podcasting in Zambia, which is always
Oh yeah.
nice to see as well. So that's pretty much amazing.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the talk now. I've turned off my video bandwidth issues. That's another problem, another challenge we have in the country. Getting good bandwidth is really hard. So our talk is mostly about culture, and it's inspired by a particular tweet that we came across recently. Um, Let me see if I can pull it up. So pretty much what I'm gonna show you. Okay, great. So this particular tweet, right? So we spent a lot of time on Twitter. So we came across this where Cameron was talking about a junior employee reaching out to him and giving him some negative feedback about a decision he made. He was celebrating inside because he felt that built a healthy culture if a junior employee is able to walk up to a CEO and tell them about a negative and some negative feedback that they're kind of going through. So that struck deep with us because culture for us is something that's very, very important. Culture for us is something that we preach everywhere we go when we're doing our community building sessions, when we're talking to family and friends, when we're talking about our work culture, different organizations that we've been to. And this kind of hit home because we're trying to build a product, which is the podcast itself. And it raises a lot of questions about when you start fusing in culture, when do you start building culture, who builds this culture, and what kind of tools can we look to use to kind of benefit positively from this wonderful concept and stuff like that. Cynthia, do you want to go first and talk about your experience with culture?
Well, I think I recently had an experience of my own, whereas I know I'm still getting questioned about why I left my previous workplace. And I think I could not go into details because there are privacy issues attached to it. But I remember clearly pointing out that part of the working culture there made me realize I could not fit in there because openness wasn't really a priority. There was more of, hey, I am above you, what I say goes. So even if you give in suggestions, it wouldn't be received as well as you would expect it, or in in an objective way where one would allow you to air out your suggestions or ideas. Then they run through the idea and see if it is actually feasible or not. And well, I did stick around for a while, but eventually it got to a point where I just said, you know what, Cynthia, it's time to boot out. So I had to make the bold step. And for me, it's very important because eventually it does affect the performance of your employees. Some of us thrive better in environments where it's open enough for us to give suggestions and ideas, and they are looked into, and they are discussed, and we see if it is something that the team can take up, as opposed to where there's this strict hierarchy and lots of protocols to say, I'm CEO, you just don't come into my office and give me feedback whether it's positive or negative. So
Yeah,
yeah, it
I know
wasn't
how
an
that.
easy
I know how
decision
that
though.
is. I don't
Yeah.
think it ever is though. I don't think leaving an environment, especially one that you don't feel very comfortable in, is ever an easy decision, especially when it comes to jobs. As if your livelihood kind of depends on that job, then it becomes a little bit trickier because you have so many factors you wanna take into consideration. Are you married? Do you have
Yeah.
kids? Are you providing for people and stuff like that? So it's kind of crazy. So I kind of get that.
Oh yeah. But have you have
So
you ever experienced a situation where culture has either made you more productive and want to stick around to a particular organization, or the reverse of it, where you just want to pack your bags and run?
I've experienced both actually. In my very short career as a software engineer, it's been very interesting because like you, I thrive better in a culture where there's a lot more openness and transparency. I've experienced the extremes in terms of what I would deem a good healthy culture for me. And I know it's different from like organization to organization. Everybody's got like a unique sense of culture that they're trying to build within the hierarchy and so on and so forth. So for me, it's been more of, and I've kind of experienced both at the same time actually. Because at the time,
Yeah.
I think I had two roles with two separate entities, and one was very toxic, and one was actually very, very healthy, very open. You don't feel like you're being looked down on. Your opinion actually counts. I know eventually
Yeah.
management makes the decisions, but it still feels like people are still willing to listen to what you have to say. And I feel like that's the culture I chase. That's the culture I'm looking for. And that's the
Yeah.
what I hope to bring to like ours so that our people that work with us can, because for context, as Codecast, we have the hosts, obviously, and we have other people behind the scenes that are making the show happen. I was listening to a talk earlier, and someone was referring to the fact that they can't draw, right? They can't draw. They need someone to do like artwork and stuff like that, or like episode
Yeah.
trailers and things like that. And those are people that we have in the background that are constantly looking for input, and we're looking for theirs. So how do we create a culture that helps everybody feel like they are part of the team, and they're part of the same vision, and they're part of the this journey that we've gotten on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So Cynthia, what
Well,
does transparency and openness mean to you, though? Sorry.
well, for me, it's where there's a open, well, it's an environment where I can freely express my ideas and I mean suggestions, and they're not just immediately, trashed without having to have a decision around, I mean, a discussion around them. It's also where there's open communication. There isn't any information that is only specific. Well, I know eventually there are some uh, pieces of information that are maybe delicate and can only be circulated amongst maybe the top level management or something. But I believe eventually that if there's what's the right word, there's proper flow of information where all of us are working towards the same goal, and we all understand, and we are easily giving other information, ideas. If there's anything that needs to be communicated, it can easily be communicated. If you feel you need help, you can easily open up and say, hey, I've stumbled on a block here, and I need you to help me get over this block that I'm facing. As opposed to an environment where if you were to actually openly say, I am having a hurdle and it's blocking my progress, then people take it as though you don't know your work, or you're not worthy to be part of the team, or they should find somebody better than you. But it should be an environment where they understand that eventually not everyone can know everything, and you will need help and input from your teammates. For me, in my own words, I think that is what it would mean.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, especially with the aspect of openness and being free to talk about stuff. I know these are conversations that we've had internally so many times, brainstorming around how we could do this the best. And I just feel like creating that philosophy of sharing information freely so that people can benefit both in both directions, basically, is something that I feel like is pivotal in kind of describing what transparency and openness means for us as Codecast, right?
Yeah. And I feel, eventually, as you are trying to really build such an environment, there are some people they feel being too open about stuff. Um, it brings in some sort of vulnerability, and I've
Yeah.
been, yeah, I've been listening to Brené Brown, um, and I think there's a saying that I think where Brenny talks about vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage, and the two, that is truth and courage, aren't always comfortable, but they are not weakness. They're never weakness. In as much as they can quite feel uncomfortable to people, but it's not weakness. I feel it's actually strength, because you're getting past the uncomfortableness of having to be in that position of courage and truth.
Yeah, but it can't be easy. Like, it can't be easy to
No, it's not
be
easy. Yeah.
vulnerable, especially in the workplace, especially in a dog eats dog kind of startup world or organization where everybody is out to get to the top with no matter what the cost.
Yeah, well, baby steps, Mukuma, baby steps. I guess it all comes
Of
back to
course.
starting one step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I think is really important, like in terms of transparency and openness, is setting boundaries and managing expectations. Like, I know we right now it sounds like it's very open ended, right? How
Hmm.
transparent can you be? How open can you actually be? I feel like as an organization, right, you need to kind of define what this means for your team, and or maybe let me not use the organization. Let me just say, as a team, like you need to decide what this means for you guys and how it can relate to what exactly you want to share. Like, for
Yeah.
example, what is your motive as a team? Like, as a podcast, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? Like, we want to talk to developers across Africa, right? We want to talk to
Mhm.
people in the tech scene. We want to interact with everybody. Like, what are our motives, and how do we manage? How do we disseminate these motives to the rest of the team? Does everybody understand? Like, whenever we sit down and have meetings, do they have a theme that conforms to these, values of openness and transparency in the way that we've defined them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, like even going a step further and linking this back to the tweet, right? Collecting feedback. How is this feedback collected? And stuff like that. But I did find a very interesting tweet in the thread, right? And I
Yeah.
think we'll find a way to link this somewhere so people can find it. There's a person that was talking about how cultures aren't built by CEOs, right?
Mhm.
And they're only a part of the entire engine building this stuff together. No, this person talked about how culture consists of how people work together, and it's not solely the responsibility of one person, and so on and so forth. And it really got me thinking about how, like, as a team, who do we put the responsibility on in terms of building this culture? Because I believe, like, this culture, if it resonates with the team, externally, this is something that's very visible. So what do you think about how culture is built? Like, who's responsible for it ultimately?
Oh, wow. Well, this can be debated on, and I'm yet to find the correct answer to this, to be honest. Some people would say you start from the bottom, like the the in the team, you start from the bottom and going up, and others will say, well, start from the top and go to the bottom. For me, I prefer starting from the top, because eventually the people at the top really make it easier to sort of set the structure and the culture, where to a point where the ones at how would can I call them juniors, for lack of a better term?
Well, lots of people will be upset if you call them juniors.
I know, that's why I'm like, can I use that? Hope I'm not crucified for using that word. But okay, let us say that there's a line dividing to the team, like management and the non-management team members, right? So eventually I feel it would be easier if management themselves, discuss and set goals on how they're going to structure an open and transparent culture in their organization, and then trickle
Yeah,
it down. But of course, eventually, as they are doing the actual structure, though, I feel it's easier when you involve even the rest of the team, so that they feel that ownership bit, to know that, oh, I did participate in making this culture and structuring it, and if it's setting boundaries, they all contributed to it. What sort of boundaries are we going to set? If we're saying each one of us can openly air out their views, opinions, and suggestions, how are we going to go about it, receiving those suggestions, ideas, and opinions? And also, then if they need work or there's action that's needed on them, how are we going then to proceed, right? So
yeah.
eventually, yeah, it might start from the top, but the bottom of the pyramid has to participate as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with you because I believe the top should initiate. I think in terms of behavioral changes, if it starts from the top, I think it's much easier for you to cascade down to the bottom of the pyramid, provided that everybody is on the same page about, like I said, what the motives are and like where we're trying to get at as a team or an organization or whatever it is, right? And if it comes from the top, it sets an example. It sets an example for everybody, and it kind of just makes sure that if you, as a leader, right,
Yeah.
are very open about receiving feedback, very open about transparency and sharing your decisions, whatever big decisions you're making, if you're able to make them with your team, it makes them a bit more open and they can take ownership of this decision and make the changes necessary. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, and I mean using tools. Well, for me, one of the organizations I worked at, they really utilized Slack in such a way that within a week of joining them, I really felt like I was already part of the team, like I had been there for over 2 months or something like that, because literally
Yeah.
every update was done there. I could easily see it. The only private group that was there was for the founders when they needed to strategize on some bits that maybe we were not supposed to be previewed to, because I mean it was outside our wake. But the rest was so open. You could see every update. We even had a birthday Slack channel where you would actually put up birthdays. Others, there was another one for ideas. If you have an idea, even if it's outside your your job description, even outside what you do as an organization, you just share it. Other people actually started businesses on the side through that channel because they would share ideas, and people would say, oh, can I partner with you? And they start off like that. Somebody actually started an events agency where they would organize events for artists and all. And
Hmm.
it went further from, oh, I know what you're interested in, you know what I'm interested in. And it makes it easier to even communicate now when it comes to business, because I'll know how uh, team member A will take my opinion if I put it in a particular way, and how team member B will take it if I maybe reconstruct it in another way. So there are also other tools. I don't know which tools you found really helpful.
Well, I mean, going back to basics, I think WhatsApp has been one of the most interesting tools that we've used to kind of communicate with each other. And I'd actually like to extend this invitation to everybody else that's listening right now. Like, feel free to comment what kind of tools you're using to communicate with other members of like your podcast and everybody involved in actually producing the podcast itself. I know like this talk isn't very relatable to people that are, for example, the only ones on their team, and there is a lot of those people. But I know that eventually you would want to have people on board, so some of this information might actually benefit you as well. So if you've used any tools, any kind of platforms to kind of make podcasting easier for you in terms of collaboration with other people, feel free to leave a comment, and would like to know what that is. So like going back to the tools that we've used, I feel like WhatsApp has been the biggest one because I feel like migrating people from WhatsApp into Slack uh was really tricky in the beginning, but I can see what you mean when we talk about the channels and all that stuff. Yeah, I think that's pretty much because we both use the same tools. So I'm basically
Yeah.
gonna say the same stuff.
Oh, well, recently I've actually on a project that I've been attached to. I'm using Rocket Chat. So it's similar
Really?
to Slack as well. Yeah, you can create channels as well. Well, they call them chat rooms, I think, there. And you can still do like direct messaging with an individual. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not using Slack, you're using Discord. You're using so many other platforms that give you an ability to communicate with people more efficiently and stuff like that. So um, that's something that I see as very beneficial, especially if you're growing from a one-man team to even more members on your team doing other facets of work.
Okay, so interestingly enough, I was reading somewhere, right? Whereas the writer was giving recommendations on some of the things that you can do to foster a culture of transparency and openness, right?
Okay.
Um, the one that I'm laughing because I don't know if many companies would do this, but they did suggest that it's this one is like one of they put them in hierarchy. So
Hmm.
this one was in particular at the bottom, where they say use a formula to calculate people's compensation, but don't just use the formula. They are suggesting you share the formula, because one of the things that that cause a non-open environment is where I'm doing the same job as Mukuma, and I don't know how much he's getting, compensations, salary, and whatnot. Like he could be getting more than I am. So maybe even suggestions that I have for making our work more efficient and faster, I'll be like, he might get a higher bonus and then he still beats me with the compensation. What do you think about that?
That's very related. I know that's a very touchy subject, especially when it comes talking about money generally. I know lots of people are very open about the kind of money they're making on a salary level, but actually releasing the formula on how you actually compensate your employees or the people on your team is something that I feel like a lot of people are still skeptical about. It also kind of
Yeah.
goes back to even as a podcast, for example,
Mhm.
would you publicize how much money you're making and how much money you're spending on all your stuff? Like, would you put that out there on your website and have everybody see what's going on? Especially if you're not doing things like donations, right? Which is like one monetization aspect where most people generally publicize how much they're raising from donations.
Well, let's just say I wouldn't really publicize on the website. So what if I actually just publicize how we're calculating the compensation bit? Not how much we're making, but how are we allocating their compensation? Part of
Uh,
our team internally, not external, internally.
yeah. Like going back to your point on publicizing stuff like compensation calculators and so on and so forth. I was thinking about how you could start like an insider blog on
Mm-hmm.
what's going on like within your organization, for example. I know there's platforms like Unbounce that help you do this. So like if you want more people to know, or like even internally, like internal memos around what's going on, it kind of helps in terms of having people understand what's going on within the organization, and also just an external facing organization facing culture to your clients as well, because it's not just internally but externally as well. It helps people kind of understand or gain an appreciation for the kind of values that you have if you're talking about what's going on within the organization, either internally or externally as well.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, what I like, something that I think I'd like to implement this coming year or at the end of this year or next year, is doing more MAAs, like Ask Me Anything, within like the team itself, because I feel like this is something that could stimulate and embrace like some kind of openness. So like we do as a podcast, right? We do weekly team meetings where
Mm-hmm.
everybody is required to be part of the meeting, and maybe if we introduce like an AMA, with management or whatever, and have the people that work under us ask a lot of questions about what's going on, how much money we're making, if that's something that we want to disclose to our employees, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that would be for me. I think I could actually even extend it. I guess today, like we're celebrating International Podcast Day. So, as a podcast, what if you actually extend it even to your listeners? You do Ask Me Anything sessions with your listeners as well. Trying to engage them in some way. Maybe those you could actually hold not weekly per se, but maybe once a month or once a quarter. I think it would bring in a few insights from your listeners.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think about having regular one-on-ones with direct reports as a way to stimulate openness?
Well, I have done one of those. So one of my one of well, I'll keep on saying one of my, because I know for privacy and data issues I can't say some of the organizations' names. But one of my former employers, they actually we used to do monthly one-on-ones. So it wasn't just with maybe me and my supervisor, but it would be me and a peer, a colleague, one of the teammates, and it would rotate. It would not be just maybe if I'm in the development team, then I only do it with the people in the development team. Sometimes you'd be coupled with someone in finance, maybe another in research, and then you just get to do one-on-one. You talk about how work has been, what are your goals for the next month, what have you achieved in the last month, do you feel you achieved enough, if you did face any hurdles, what caused those hurdles? Do you have any proposed solutions to those to make sure that they don't reoccur? And I think it was quite helpful. I even got to know some of the tasks and things that were happening in other departments, because it wasn't just within my department. I would be coupled with another person. So it was more of like you know how you do the lottery, you put
Mm-hmm.
down your names, you put in a basket, then you pick a random name. So whichever name
Yeah.
you pick, that's the person you are coupled with. Then there were one-on-ones now with your direct supervisor. Those we did bi-weekly. They also helped
Mm-hmm.
because then it gave a platform to easily give feedback to your supervisor. So they would ask us questions that would trigger you, talking about if you feel something is not right within the team. Is there something that's making you uncomfortable? What do you need to make you thrive at your work? Do you have all the tools that you need to actually work efficiently? What gaps have you noticed? Where are we doing right? And sort of things like that.
Yeah, and what you just described is a model that I really like, relating to situational leadership. So in the first stage, how do you sit down with your direct reports, show them the work, especially if you're just onboarding them into the organization? We've had instances like this year, we launched a new show, for example. We wanted to test out a new market, and we recruited a host to come and help us out with that. How do we onboard them so that they understand how we what our journey is and what we're trying to do and how we do certain things? What is our ritual, for lack of a better term? How do we do our research? How do we do our pre-recording, strategies and stuff like that? And then get them to a point where there's less support. We're doing less support and having them do more of the work, and then eventually delegating some of these roles to the direct reports, and having a very minimal support mechanism as well. So in terms of like situations, like situational leadership, right? Like I feel like if you can take advantage of some of the benefits that are there in terms of flexibility, and adapting to different environments, especially for us because of how dynamic our environment is. Things change all the time. We have a lot of challenges that we're still facing. How do we have a culture that also adapts quite easily to the environment that we're living in? We haven't started collecting donations yet. Our revenue streams are still in the early stages. So how do we manage the journey from a cost perspective as well as a quality perspective in the environment that we're currently sitting in?
Yeah. Huh.
So I've got a question for you, Cynthia. I
Yeah.
know this might be something that you might be interested in. Pros and cons of our current approach to creating good culture.
Pros and cons.
We can start with the pros.
Hmm.
What do you think about our approach so far
As CodeCast.
as CodeCast?
Well, I think in the beginning we didn't do a good job, that I will say. Like I said, the journey has been full of lessons. I think some of the things we really did, uh, uh, we took them lightly, if I may say so. Because even when we were joining, because you remember we were a team of four, and I think there were certain things that we didn't set beforehand, like how do we want to interact, what is the culture we want to embrace as a team, and how are we going to be identifying potential people to join the team, and then how do we onboard them and make them feel free, feel open enough, to ask and give us suggestions where they feel there's need for suggestions. That bit I think we sort of did neglect in the beginning, but I am impressed with how much work we have done so far. Like for instance, with the new episode that the new show that we actually launched, I think we did a better job at it. Personally, that is, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel we have improved in that. And at first I think our media person we we did also still neglect a few things, right? I remember there were instances where he didn't seem to know when to publish, or or put up a post to at least keep our listeners up to date and hyped up. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and this time it was good that we involved him, and he actually put in suggestions on how we could improve.
Yeah, I remember that very vividly. And I feel like what's been working is understanding everyone's needs and abilities, like what can everybody bring to the table. And
Yeah,
this is also going back to why someone would crucify you for saying junior, right? Because
yes,
um, people want to feel like they are important as well. So if you
yeah,
know their needs and abilities and you give them the room to make mistakes and learn and mature into valuable members of the team, I feel like that really stimulates the openness in the environment basically, and it also enhances how productive we can be and how efficient we can be, and this radiates to our listeners as well, which is something that I feel is super important.
true.
Um, yeah. So, what do you think are the key takeaways from adopting a top-down approach to culture, creating culture?
Set up communication tools that will allow communication to flow across the board, and everyone will feel included in everything that's happening. Um,
Hmm.
include everyone in the team when it comes to if there's any need for changing on any communication channels, or any strategy, or anything to do with the culture. If you feel there's supposed to be some improvement or change, it's good to include them. And I feel also, as a leader, it, it's important to know that you can't have one model of leadership and put it across the board. It's important to also look at the situation and the person you are actually dealing with. Then, like, what sort of leadership model would you use? I know it can be, sometimes it can sound and can be a bit too involving, but I think eventually when you learn to do these things, it becomes easier, and you do them with less effort. But the biggest one I've taken out is the need to really use situational leadership and not one model across the board.
Yeah, and I agree with that because I feel like it gives you the platform to adapt, and it also gives you the platform to change the style as you move from one level to the other. The goal is not to keep yourself confined to one model, but be able to adapt to different situations that you find yourself in. And I feel like that's really, really important. And I think one thing I forgot to talk about was just we talked about our weekly meetings, but we didn't talk about how it's important that you have the kind of very honest and brutal meetings where we talk about accomplishments and any goals that we've achieved, and especially challenges, any challenges that we've encountered, and how we can move past them as well. So going back to the tweet, right? And I think it's put up on the screen now. Going back to the tweet, I wanted to know. Um, First of all, I think you need to decide whether you should call them junior or not right
Oh no,
now.
I
And
did apologize for using the word junior. At that point in time, I couldn't find a better word. Dear listeners, I do apologize once again. Teammates, Mukuma, teammates and peers.
the teammates forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, so just going back to the tweet, I definitely agree with the tweet that it's important, and we should all be happy when team members can come and share something, whether negative or positive. We'll just call it feedback in general to us in whatever circumstance, and that's something that I think is really valuable. Um, Coming back home, I'm hoping that we can have a lot of people kind of embrace culture in general as something that they need to encompass whenever they're getting ready to embark on a new journey. Sitting down together and writing down your goals, your values, your mission, your vision is something that really plays a big role in, first of all, how I'll call it the vibe basically within the organization is. And if the vibe is good within, then this is something externally everybody will appreciate. Similar to how the vibe is good, your listeners would be very happy to listen to your podcast, and everything will just be, will just fall into place, I guess. Well, not fall into place, but you know what I mean.
Okay. I think we
Okay,
have...
yeah, I don't know if there's any questions.
Hey guys, thank you both so much for sharing your story. I'm just a lot of positive comments over on our live page. Fantastic, thank you. This has been so interesting. I think you guys were monitoring the chat over there. This was appreciated because it's a little bit different spin from what we've usually have over on our broadcast. And it's been nice to get the perspective of the top-down approach, building a healthy culture, from your perspective of building your podcast and working with Zambian countries. So I really appreciate you volunteering your time and energies to be part of the International Podcast Day broadcast.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I just want to send a big... Yeah, and I just want to send a big shout out to everybody that listens to us already. You've been helping, pushing us along, especially that all this time it's been mostly volunteering to make the podcast and making sure that everything is done. We appreciate everybody that listens, and we're looking forward to even more people listening and giving us feedback.
Yeah, we're very open to feedback. We feed on feedback.
We live and breathe feedback.
That's the best way. That's how we improve ourselves. That's how we improve our shows. That's how we connect with people. So on behalf of the International Podcast Day team, and thank you for celebrating alongside with us. We really appreciate you representing yourself, Zambia, your podcast. So Cynthia Mukuma, thank you so much for joining the broadcast this year.
Thank you for having us. Happy International Podcast Day to everybody.
Yeah.
Yes,
Happy
absolutely.
International Podcast Day.
All right, everybody, have a good, happy International Podcast Day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great.
All right.